The morning mist clung to the floating crystal spires of Perothia like silk scarves around a dancer's neck. High above the cloud sea, the dragon city sparkled with ethereal beauty, its towers reaching toward the twin suns that painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. Yet within the grandest spire of all, the Imperial Palace, darkness had settled like a heavy blanket over the royal chambers. Prince Drakkar Flameheart sat motionless on the edge of his crystalline bed, staring at his pale, slender hands. At 25 years old, he should have possessed the mighty wings of crimson scales, the fire breath that could melt mountains, and the ability to soar through the heavens with the grace of his ancestors. Instead, he remained trapped in what the dragons called the small form, appearing more human than dragon. With only the faintest shimmer of scales along his arms and the golden eyes that marked his royal bloodline, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor outside his chambers. Drakkar recognized the distinctive rhythm immediately. His father, Emperor Vorthok Flameheart, approaching with the weight of 7 centuries pressing down on his massive shoulders. The prince quickly straightened his posture, though he could not hide the weariness that had become his constant companion. Emperor Vorthok entered without ceremony, his enormous dragon form having to duck through the enlarged doorway that had been specially crafted for his visits. His scales gleamed like polished rubies in the morning light, and wisps of smoke curled from his nostrils as he regarded his son with a mixture of love and barely concealed frustration. "The healers from the Andromeda system have departed," Vorthok announced, his voice a low rumble that made the crystal walls hum in harmony. "They claim your condition is beyond their expertise, as did the mystics from Centauri Prime before them." Drakkar felt his heart sink further into his chest. And the energy crystals from the forbidden moon of Zarian? Useless. The Emperor's tail lashed once, betraying his emotional state despite his controlled tone. 27 different specialists, son. 27 different failures. The council grows restless, speaking in whispers about the succession, about whether the bloodline has been cursed. The words hit Drakkar like physical blows. He had heard the whispers too, filtering through the palace corridors like poison. Some claimed his human-like appearance was punishment for his grandfather's decision to spare Earth during the Great Conquest. Others suggested that his mother's gentle nature had somehow weakened the royal bloodline. The cruelest voices wondered aloud if he was truly his father's son at all. "Perhaps they are right," Drakkar whispered, his voice barely audible. "Perhaps I am not meant to rule. Perhaps I am not even truly a dragon." Vorthok's massive head swung toward his son, golden eyes flashing with fierce protectiveness. "You are my son, my heir, and a true dragon prince. Your scales may be pale, your form may be small, but you carry the fire of our ancestors within you. I feel it even if you cannot." Before Drakkar could respond, a gentle knock echoed through the chamber. Both dragons turned toward the sound, surprised by the soft, almost timid quality of it. The palace staff typically announced themselves with bold proclamations, befitting the grandeur of the Imperial court. "Enter," Vorthok commanded. The door opened to reveal a figure unlike any Drakkar had ever seen in the palace halls. She was human, unmistakably so, with flowing auburn hair that caught the light like captured sunbeams, and eyes the color of deep forest leaves. Her clothing was simple, practical, the garb of a traveler rather than a courtier. She carried herself with quiet confidence, seemingly unintimidated by the presence of the massive dragon emperor. "Your Imperial Majesty," she said, offering a respectful bow that managed to convey courtesy without subservience. "My name is Celeste Moonwhisper. I am a healer from the human colonies of New Terra. I understand you have need of my services." Vorthok's eyes narrowed. "A human healer? Who dared to suggest such a thing?" "My son requires the attention of the greatest dragon mystics in the galaxy, not some primitive practitioner from a backwater world." Celeste's gaze remained steady, unruffled by the Emperor's obvious skepticism. "With respect, Your Majesty, if the greatest dragon mystics in the galaxy had been able to help Prince Drakkar, I would not be here. Sometimes, the answer we seek comes from the most unexpected sources." Drakkar found himself studying this strange human woman with growing fascination. Her presence filled the room with something he had not experienced in years. Hope, not the desperate, grasping hope that had accompanied each failed treatment, but something quieter, more sustainable. Something that felt almost like peace. "What makes you believe you can succeed where so many others have failed?" he asked, speaking directly to her for the first time. Celeste turned her attention to him, and when their eyes met, Draker felt something shift inside his chest. A warmth that had nothing to do with dragonfire began to spread through his being. "Because, Your Highness, I do not see you as a problem to be solved," she said simply. "I see you as a person to be understood." The Emperor snorted, a small puff of flame escaping his nostrils. "Riddles and philosophy. My son needs power, not poetry." "Power without understanding is merely destruction," Celeste replied calmly. "An understanding without compassion is merely knowledge. Your son possesses something far rarer than raw magical ability, Your Majesty. He possesses wisdom, kindness, and a gentle strength that this galaxy desperately needs." Draker felt his cheeks flush, a reaction that would have been invisible if he had possessed proper dragon scales. Instead, the human-like quality of his skin betrayed his emotional response, and he saw Celeste's eyes soften with something that looked almost like affection. "You speak as though you have observed my son for years," Vorthok noted, his tone still skeptical but less hostile than before. "Yet you arrived only this morning." "I have been watching him, in a way," Celeste admitted. "Yes." The human colonies receive news from across the galaxy, stories of the Dragon Prince who chooses diplomacy over warfare, who spends his time in the palace gardens tending to injured creatures rather than training for battle. A prince who reads poetry from a dozen worlds and speaks 7 languages, not for conquest, but for connection. She stepped closer to Draka, and he caught the scent of starflowers and morning rain that seemed to cling to her skin. "The universe is vast and often cruel, Your Highness. It does not need another conqueror. It needs a healer, a bridge builder. Someone who can see the beauty in difference rather than fear it." Draker stared at her in amazement. No one had ever described his interests and inclinations as anything other than weaknesses, unsuitable for a future emperor. To hear them spoken of as virtues, as necessary qualities for leadership, felt like discovering he could breathe underwater. "Pretty words," Vorthok rumbled, though Draker detected a note of uncertainty in his father's voice. "But words will not grant my son his dragon form, won't they?" Celeste asked, tilting her head with a slight smile. "Your Majesty, with respect, has anyone ever asked Prince Dracker what he wants his dragon form to look like? Has anyone ever asked him what kind of dragon he wishes to become?" Father and son exchanged glances. In 25 years of treatments, consultations, and mystical procedures, no one had ever posed such a question. The assumption had always been that Dracker would eventually manifest the traditional form of his lineage, massive, powerful, fearsome. In his crimson glory, Draker began, then stopped, realizing he had never truly considered the question himself. "I suppose I always assumed it would be predetermined by bloodline." "Many things are inherited," Celeste said gently. "But the shape of our souls, the form our truest selves take, that is something we choose. Your body is waiting for your spirit to decide what it wants to become." She moved closer still, close enough that Dracker could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. "May I?" she asked, extending her hand toward him. Draker nodded, not trusting his voice. When Celeste's fingers touched his arm, just above where the faint scales began, he felt a jolt of energy unlike anything he had experienced. It was not the harsh, demanding power that the previous healers had tried to force into him. This was gentle, warm, accepting. It felt like coming home to a place he had never known existed. "Tell me about your dreams," Celeste said softly. "When you sleep, do you fly?" "Yes," Draker whispered, his eyes closing as her touch sent waves of soothing energy through his being. "But not like my father. In my dreams, I am smaller, faster. My scales are not crimson but gold and silver, like captured starlight. Not breathe fire that destroys, I breathe light that heals." Vorthek's sharp intake of breath was audible throughout the chamber. Draker's eyes snapped open, expecting to see disappointment or anger on his father's face. Instead, he found wonder. The phoenix crown, the Emperor whispered. By the ancient flames, you dream of the phoenix crown. Celeste looked between father and son with curiosity. What is the phoenix crown? A legend, Vorthok said, his massive form seeming to tremble with emotion. The first dragon emperor was said to possess two forms, the great red dragon of conquest and the golden phoenix of healing. The phoenix form was lost to our bloodline over 2 millennia ago. The ancient texts spoke of its return, but only when the greatest need arose, and only through. He paused, staring at Celeste with new understanding. Through what, Your Majesty? She prompted. Through the love of one who sees beyond species, beyond form, beyond the boundaries that divide us. Vorthok's voice was barely a whisper now. The phoenix crown can only be awakened by a heart that loves without condition, without expectation, without fear. Draker felt the world shift around him. Everything suddenly made sense. His inability to take the traditional dragon form, his gentle nature, his instinctive desire to heal rather than harm. He was not broken or incomplete. He was something else entirely, something that had been waiting centuries to return to the world. Will you help me? He asked Celeste, his voice steady for the first time in years. Her smile was radiant as the twin suns outside. I will help you become exactly who you were always meant to be, Prince Draker. Nice. No more, no less, but nothing. Other than your truest self. As the first day of his transformation began, Draker felt the stirring of something powerful within his chest. Not the aggressive fire of conquest, but the gentle warmth of healing light. And in Celeste's eyes, he saw reflected not the dragon prince he had failed to become, but the phoenix king he was destined to be. 3 weeks had passed since Celeste. Moonwhisper arrived at the Imperial Palace of Perothia, and the changes in Prince Draker were nothing short of miraculous. Each morning found him in the palace gardens with his human healer, practicing what she called soul meditation, a technique that encouraged him to listen to his inner voice, rather than forcing his transformation through external magic. The results spoke for themselves. Golden scales now shimmered along Draker's arms and shoulders, catching the light like precious metal. Small wings had begun to manifest between his shoulder blades, delicate and iridescent like butterfly wings, made of starlight. Most remarkably, his eyes now glowed with an inner fire that was warm and welcoming rather than intimidating. Celeste knelt beside him in the morning dew, her hand resting gently on his back where the new wing buds were emerging. Remember, she said softly, transformation is not about becoming something you are not. It is about revealing what you have always been. Draker closed his eyes, feeling the familiar warmth of her touch spreading through his being. Over the weeks, that warmth had become as essential to him as breathing. He found himself thinking of Celeste constantly, her laugh when he managed a small flight, her tears of joy when his scales first appeared, the way her eyes sparkled with pride at each small victory. I can feel it, he whispered. The phoenix. Fire. It wants to emerge, but something holds it back. Ow. What do you think is stopping it? Celeste asked, her voice patient as always. Before Draker could answer, heavy footsteps echoed across the garden courtyard. Both turned to see Captain Raven's Stormblade approaching. Her military uniform crisp, despite the long journey she had clearly just completed. Raven was a striking woman with silver-streaked black hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. Her presence commanded immediate attention, and even in the peaceful garden setting, she radiated the controlled danger of a seasoned warrior. Celeste, Raven called out, her voice tight with concern. I need to speak with you privately. Celeste rose to her feet, but Draker caught her hand. The simple contact sent electricity through both of them, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. If this concerns the political situation, I should hear it as well, Draker said, his voice carrying new authority. As heir to the throne, I need to understand what we are facing. Raven studied him with calculating eyes, taking in the golden scales and developing wings. You look different, Your Highness. Stronger. I feel different, Draker admitted. But apparently not different enough to fully transform. Captain Stormblade nodded grimly. That might be for the best, given what I have to report. She glanced between Celeste and Drakkar, then seemed to make a decision. The outer colonies are in upheaval. Anti-human sentiment is spreading like wildfire. Fueled by reports of a human having unprecedented access to the royal family, Celeste felt her heart sink. What kind of reports? Chancellor Morgrim Shadowscale has been making speeches throughout the outer territories, Raven continued. He claims that human influence is weakening the royal bloodline, that the prince's continued inability to take proper dragon form is proof of human contamination. Drakkar's eyes flashed with anger, and for the first time Celeste saw a hint of the traditional dragonfire within him. Morgrim oversteps his bounds. My father will not tolerate such insubordination. Your father may not have a choice, Raven said bluntly. 3 outer colonies have already declared their intention to refuse tribute until the human influence is removed from the palace. 2 more are considering similar action. The Empire is fracturing, Your Highness. The weight of these words settled. Over the garden, like a dark cloud, Celeste felt the familiar ache of being caught between worlds, too human for the Dragon Empire. Changed by her experiences here, to ever truly return to her old life among the colonies. There is something else, Raven added, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Intelligence reports suggest that Morgrim is not acting alone. He has formed an alliance with the purest faction among the dragons. They believe that any mixing of species weakens both races. Drakkar stood abruptly, his developing wings fluttering with agitation. They would tear the Empire apart rather than accept change. Change frightens them, Celeste said quietly. And I am the symbol of everything they fear. No, Drakkar said firmly, turning to face her fully. They are the symbol of everything they could become if they chose courage over fear. The intensity in his voice made Celeste's breath catch. She had grown to care for this gentle prince over their weeks together, but the fire in his golden eyes now spoke of something deeper than mere affection. Raven cleared her throat pointedly. Forgive the interruption, but there are more immediate concerns. Morgrim has requested a formal audience with Emperor Vorthok. He intends to present a petition demanding your removal from the palace, Celeste. When? Drakkar asked. Tomorrow at midday. Celeste felt the familiar weight of duty settling on her shoulders. Throughout her life, she had been forced to walk away from places and people she had grown to love in order to protect them from the consequences of her presence. The pattern was repeating itself here, in the most important place of all. Then I will leave tonight, she said simply, before the audience takes place. If I am gone, Morgrim loses his primary argument. No. Drakkar's voice was sharp with desperation. You cannot leave. Not now, when I am so close to understanding what I am meant to become. Celeste felt her heart breaking as she looked at him. The golden scales along his arms seemed to dim as his distress grew, and she realized that her emotions were directly connected to his transformation. Your Highness, she said formally, trying to create distance between them even as her heart screamed in protest. Your people must come first. The Empire cannot fracture because of one human healer. The Empire is already fractured, Drakkar replied. It has been for centuries. We have ruled through fear and force, caring nothing for the hearts and minds of our subjects. Perhaps it is time for that to change. Raven watched this exchange with growing understanding. You love her, she said to Drakkar, not making it a question. Drakkar looked at Celeste, his eyes reflecting all the vulnerability he had learned to show over their weeks together. Yes, he said simply. I love her with every fiber of my being. She has shown me not just how to transform my body, but how to transform my soul. Celeste felt tears streaming down her cheeks. And I love you, she whispered. But love is not always enough to overcome the barriers that divide us. It is the only thing that can overcome them, Drakkar insisted, stepped closer to her, his developing wings spreading instinctively as if to shield her from the world. In my dreams, I see a future where humans and dragons work together, where strength comes from unity rather than domination. That future is only possible if we choose love over fear. Before Celeste could respond, another voice echoed across the garden. How touching. All three turned to see Chancellor Morgrim's shadow scale emerging from behind a crystal pillar. Was an imposing dragon in his humanoid form, with black scales that seemed to absorb light and eyes like chips of ice. His presence made the very air feel colder. Chancellor Dracker said, his voice carefully controlled. To what do we owe this unexpected visit? I came to see for myself the extent of the contamination, Morgrim replied, his gaze fixed on Celeste, with undisguised disgust. The reports hardly did justice to the reality. A human woman openly consorting with the heir to the throne, filling his head with romantic nonsense while his people suffer. My people suffer because of dragons, like you, Dracker shot back. Dragons who see strength only in domination and view compassion as weakness. Morgrim laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Look at yourself, boy. Your scales are the wrong color, your wings are pathetic, and your fire burns so weakly that a human child could withstand it. This is what comes of human influence. Stepped forward, placing herself between Morgrim and Dracker. Your Excellency, if you have grievances with the Imperial family, surely they can be addressed through proper channels. Proper channels. Morgrim's eyes blazed with cold fire. The proper channel would have been to burn every human world to ash centuries ago. Instead, we showed mercy, and this is our reward, the corruption of our royal bloodline. Dracker's developing wings began to glow with golden light, and Celeste felt the air around them growing warm. The prince's anger was triggering something powerful within him, something that felt both wonderful and terrifying. You speak of corruption, Dracker said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the garden flowers turn toward him like sunflowers seeking the sun. But I see evolution. I see the possibility of becoming something greater than we have ever been. Greater, Morgrim snarled. You are a pale shadow of your ancestors, boy. Your father may be blinded by sentiment, but the Empire will not follow a weakling. The insult hit its mark, and Dracker's transformation accelerated dramatically. Golden. Light poured from his skin as scales erupted across his body. His wings expanded, revealing intricate patterns that seemed to shift and dance like living flame. When he opened his mouth, instead of the destructive fire of his lineage, pure healing light emerged. I am not a weakling, Dracker said, his voice. Now carrying the full power of his awakening heritage, I am something new. I am the Phoenix Crown, returned to heal the wounds that dragons like you have inflicted on this galaxy. Morgrim stepped backward, clearly shaken by the display of power. Impossible. The Phoenix bloodline was lost millennia ago. Nothing is ever truly lost, Celeste said, moving to stand beside Dracker. As her hand touched his transformed skin, his golden glow intensified. It simply waits for the right moment to return. The Chancellor's eyes darted between them, calculation replacing shock. The prophecy, he breathed. The old text spoke of the Phoenix Crown awakening through forbidden love, not forbidden, Dracker corrected, his wings now fully manifested and radiating warm light. Necessary. This galaxy has been torn apart by the belief that different species cannot coexist in harmony. We are here to prove that belief wrong. Morgrim's expression hardened. Then you have signed your own death warrant, boy, purist. Faction will never accept a half-human emperor. Then perhaps it is time for a new kind of empire, Dracker replied. One built on cooperation rather than conquest. As the Chancellor stalked away, muttering threats and promises of retribution, Celeste turned to Dracker with wonder in her eyes. His transformation was nearly complete now, not the massive, intimidating form of traditional dragons, but something far more beautiful. He stood before her as a being of golden light and healing fire, his wings translucent and shot through with patterns that looked like star maps. You are magnificent, she whispered. We are magnificent, he corrected, pulling her into his arms. Together, we are everything this galaxy needs us to be. But even as they embraced, both knew that their greatest challenges lay ahead. Morgrim would not accept defeat easily, and the purist faction represented a threat to everything they hoped to build together. The Phoenix had awakened, but the fire had yet to be tested. The Imperial throne room had never witnessed such tension. Dragons from across the 7 systems filled the vast crystalline chamber. 8, their scales glinting like living jewels in the light of the twin suns. At the center of it all, Emperor Vorthok sat upon his massive throne of black obsidian, his ancient eyes reflecting the weight of an empire on the brink of civil war. Chancellor Morgrim's shadow scale stood at the foot of the throne, flanked by representatives. From the purest faction, their demands were simple and non-negotiable. Remove all human influence from the royal court. Exile Celeste Moonwhisper from dragon space. Add return Prince Drakkar to traditional dragon healers who would force his transformation, through blood magic if necessary. Your Imperial Majesty, Morgrim began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. The outer colonies grow restless. 3 systems have already ceased tribute payments, and 7 more threaten to follow. The Empire, our ancestors, built through strength and purity, is crumbling because of one human woman's influence over your heir. A murmur rippled through the assembled dragons, some nodding in agreement, while others remained carefully neutral. Vorthok's expression gave nothing away, but Celeste could see the pain in his ancient eyes. She stood in the witness circle, feeling the weight of hundreds of hostile gazes upon her. "You speak of purity," came a voice from the entrance to the throne room. "But I wonder if you truly understand what that word means." Every head turned as Prince Drakkar entered the chamber, and gasps echoed from wall to wall. His transformation was now complete, revealing something that none of the assembled dragons had ever imagined possible. He moved with fluid grace, his humanoid form wreathed in golden light that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, his wings translucent and shot through with patterns like living constellations, spread behind him in a display of ethereal beauty. But it was his eyes that truly captured attention, no longer merely golden. They now held depths of starfire that seemed to peer directly into the souls of those who met his gaze. "My son," Emperor Vorthok breathed, rising from his throne for the first time in decades. "You have achieved the Phoenix Crown." "I have become what I was always meant to be," Drakkar replied, his voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal walls sing in response. "Not through force or ancient magic, but through understanding, acceptance, and love." Chancellor Morgrim's face contorted with rage. "Love," he spat. "You speak of love with a lesser species as though it were something to celebrate rather than a perversion of nature itself." Drakkar's gaze fixed on the Chancellor, and suddenly the room filled with warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the warmth of healing, of comfort, of hope made manifest. "Tell me, Chancellor," Drakkar said softly, "when did you last feel truly happy? When did you last create something instead of destroying it? When did you last look at another being, dragon, human, or otherwise, and feel joy at their existence? Rather than calculating how to use them?" The questions hit Morgrim like physical blows, and several dragons in the assembly shifted uncomfortably as they realized the same questions applied to them. "Happiness is a luxury," Morgrim snarled. "The universe is built on struggle, on the strong conquering the weak. That is the natural order." "No," said another voice from the chamber entrance. "That is the old order. It is time for something new." Captain Raven Stormblade entered, but she was not alone. Behind her came a delegation of humans from across the colonies, scientists, artists, engineers, healers, and diplomats. At their head walked an elderly woman whose silver hair seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. "Grandmother Luna," Celeste whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "Luna Starweaver. Drakkar's deceased mother should not have been able to enter the throne room. She had passed into the eternal flames 3 years earlier, her spirit released to join the cosmic dance of creation. Yet here she stood, translucent but unmistakably real, her presence filling the chamber with a peace that even the most hostile dragons could feel. "My beloved son," Luna said, her voice like silver bells in a gentle breeze. "You have grown into something more beautiful than I ever dared dream." Vorthok's massive form trembled as he looked upon his mate's spirit. "How is this possible?" "Love makes all things possible," she replied, moving toward Drakkar with steps that left trails of starlight. "The Phoenix Crown is not just a transformation of the body, my dear ones. It is a transformation of the spirit itself, and such transformations create ripples that extend beyond the boundaries of life and death. She turned to address the assembled dragons, her presence commanding attention without demanding submission. You fear change because you have forgotten what you once were? Long ago, dragons were not conquerors, but gardeners of the cosmos. Tended worlds, nurtured life, and celebrated the infinite diversity of creation. We became rulers not through force, but through service. Pretty legends, Morgrim interrupted, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. But the reality is that humans are weak, primitive, and unworthy of equality with dragonkind. Are they? Luna smiled, gesturing toward the human delegation. Tell me, Chancellor, which species created art so beautiful that it moved dragon? Hearts to tears? Which species developed medicine that could heal wounds, thought incurable? Which species looked at the vast darkness between stars and chose to explore it rather than exploit it? Dr. Neov Chen, one of the human delegates, stepped forward. Your Excellency, if I may, she said, addressing Emperor Vorthok directly. Did not come here as supplicants or conquerors. We came because we believe that together our species can accomplish things that neither could achieve alone. She activated a holographic projector that filled the throne room with images of collaborative projects between humans and dragons, cities where both species work together. Medical advances that combined dragon fire healing with human surgical precision, and artistic creations that blended the best of both cultures. This is the future we offer, Dr. Chen continued. Not the subjugation of one species by another, but true partnership in shaping the destiny of this galaxy. Morgrim's supporters began to murmur among themselves, clearly shaken by what they were seeing. The images showed not weakness or contamination, but unprecedented beauty and achievement, Nuff Morgrim roared, his scales darkening as his anger grew. I will not stand here and listen to these fairy tales. The Dragon Empire was built on strength, and it will be maintained through strength. He began to transform, his humanoid shape expanding into the massive, traditional dragon form, black scales like polished obsidian, wings that blotted out light, and eyes that burned with destructive fire. Several other purest dragons followed his lead, filling the chamber with their intimidating presence. If you will not see reason, Morgrim growled, his voice now a thunderous roar, then perhaps you will see reality, challenged the so-called Phoenix Crown to single combat. Let us see what your pretty golden scales can accomplish against true dragon power. The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to Drakkar. Traditional dragon law was clear, a formal challenge from a high-ranking noble could not be refused. But everyone present knew that Drakkar had never engaged in combat, had never even breathed destructive fire. His phoenix transformation granted him healing powers, not weapons of war. Celeste stepped forward without hesitation, placing herself between Morgrim and Drakkar. The challenge is mine to accept, she declared, her voice ringing with unexpected authority. A human cannot stand as champion for a dragon prince, Morgrim scoffed. She is not human, Luna Starweaver said, her spirit form blazing brighter. Not anymore. As she spoke, golden light began to pour from Celeste's skin, mirroring the radiance that surrounded Drakkar. Her auburn hair lifted as though moved by an ethereal wind, and her eyes began to shine with the same starfire that blazed in her beloved's gaze. The Phoenix Crown is not a solitary power, Luna explained to the amazed assembly. It is a bond between souls that transcends species, form, and even death itself. When two hearts unite in perfect love and understanding, they become something greater than the sum of their parts. Celeste felt the transformation flowing through her like liquid light. She was still recognizably human, but enhanced, elevated, made into something that could stand as equal to any dragon. Wings of pure energy unfurled from her shoulders, and when she spoke, her voice carried the same harmonic power as Drakkar's. I accept your challenge, Chancellor, she said, rising into the air on wings of golden flame. But know that you face not just one opponent, but the unified power of love itself. Morgrim launched himself at her with all the fury of traditional dragon might, but Celeste did not meet force with force. Instead, she danced around his attacks, her energy wings allowing her to move with impossible grace. Where his dark fire sought to destroy, She breathed healing light that transformed the destructive flames into harmless illumination. The battle was unlike anything the dragons had ever witnessed. Morgrim's raw power crashed against Celeste's graceful strength like ocean waves against an unyielding cliff. But slowly, inevitably, the dark dragon began to weaken. His attacks became desperate, his movements sluggish. "This is impossible," he gasped, hovering in the air with wings that trembled from exhaustion. "You are nothing. Human, a servant, a contamination of pure bloodlines." "I am love made manifest," Celeste replied, her voice filled with compassion even for her opponent. "Love, Chancellor, is the most powerful force in the universe." She extended her hand toward him, not an attack, but an offering. Golden light flowed from her fingertips, and where it touched Morgrim's dark scales, they began to change. The black obsidian gave way to deep purple, then violet, then silver. "Feel what you have forgotten," she whispered. "Remember the joy of creation, the peace of acceptance, the strength that comes from unity rather than domination." Morgrim's eyes widened as memories flooded back himself as a young dragon, full of wonder at the beauty of the stars. Dreams of poetry he had written centuries ago, before duty and ambition hardened his heart. The face of a dragoness he had loved and lost, whose gentle nature he had forced himself to forget. Tears of liquid silver streamed down his transformed face as he settled to the floor of the throne room. "What have I become?" he whispered. "What have I lost?" "Nothing that cannot be found again," Drakkar said, landing beside Celeste and taking her hand. Their combined radiance filled the chamber with warmth and hope. "The past is gone, Chancellor, but the future remains unwritten." Emperor Vorthok rose from his throne, his ancient eyes bright with tears of joy.
"I'll by the eternal flames,"
he declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the Empire through the crystal resonance network. "I have witnessed the return of the Phoenix Crown, the awakening of powers lost to us for millennia. Let it be recorded that this day marks not just a new chapter in dragon history, but the birth of a new era for all species in our galaxy." He turned to address the assembled dragons and humans alike. "Too long have we ruled through fear, maintained order through force, and defined strength as the ability to dominate others. Today we choose a different path. Today we choose to build rather than conquer, to heal rather than harm, to unite rather than divide." The Emperor's gaze settled on Drakkar and Celeste, still glowing with phoenix fire. "My son, you have shown us what we can become when we embrace love over fear. Will you accept the crown? Not as Emperor of Dragons alone, but as the first Phoenix King of a united galaxy?" Drakkar looked at Celeste, seeing in her eyes all the love, strength, and wisdom he would need for the trials ahead. "We accept," he said, the plural deliberate and meaningful. "Not as rulers over our subjects, but as servants of something greater than ourselves." Luna Starweaver's spirit form began to fade, but her smile was radiant as starlight. "My beloved family," she said, her voice growing distant. "You have given this old galaxy something it has not known for eons: hope for tomorrow." As she vanished into the eternal flames, the throne room erupted in celebration. Dragons who had entered as enemies embraced humans as newfound allies. The crystal walls sang with harmonies that spoke of joy, unity, and the promise of wonders yet to come. In the months that followed, the transformation of the Empire became the stuff of legend. The Phoenix Crown powers allowed Drakkar and Celeste to heal old wounds between species, to terraform dead worlds back to life, and to establish colonies where humans and dragons worked together as equals. Their love had become a beacon that drew other species from across the galaxy, all seeking to be part of something greater than they could achieve alone. General Thane Ironwing, once skeptical of human capabilities, became the first dragon to undergo the voluntary transformation that allowed him to work seamlessly with human engineers. Captain Raven Stormblade established the Integration Corps, a combined military force that protected the growing alliance through cooperation rather than conquest. Even Chancellor Morgrim, his heart opened by the Phoenix Fire, became one of the most passionate advocates for the new order. He traveled throughout the Empire, sharing his transformation story and helping other dragons overcome their fear of change. The wedding of Drakkar and Celeste was celebrated across 7 systems, with beings from hundreds of species attending to witness the union that had changed the course of galactic history. As they exchanged vows beneath the light of twin suns, their combined radiance created aurora patterns that could be seen from space. You know, Celeste said during their first dance as husband and wife. Her wings intertwined with his in the ancient dragon gesture of eternal bonding. When I first arrived at Parothia, I thought I was coming to heal a broken prince. Draker spun her gently through the air, both of them glowing with phoenix fire that painted the wedding guests in shades of gold and starlight. And now? Now I realize we were both broken, she replied, her eyes shining with tears of pure joy. Broken apart so that we could be made whole together. Above them, the stars themselves seemed to dance in celebration of a love that had transformed, not just to hearts, but an entire galaxy. The Phoenix Crown had awakened, and with it, a new chapter in the cosmic story of hope, healing, and the infinite power of hearts united in perfect love. The age of conquest was over. The age of connection had begun.